The day's headlines. Clark International Airport reports of a smooth arrival of world leaders attending the 31st ASEAN Summit. U.S. President Donald Trump offers to act as mediator between China and other countries claiming territories in the West Philippine Sea. Philippine exports to ASEAN countries increased from January to September this year. And the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency arrests 4 soldiers in a gun for hire involved in illegal drugs. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. President Rodrigo Duterte expressed his thanks to ASEAN member states and other international partners of the Philippines for their assistance in the campaign against the Maute Group terrorists in Marawi City. In his speech during the opening ceremony of the 31st ASEAN Summit, Duterte lauded the countries that sent relief items for displaced residents as well as assistance for the military. Fighting broke out in the city after government troops tried to arrest Abu Sayyaf leader Isnilon Hapilon and his cohorts last May 23. It officially ended on October 23 after military units neutralized Hapilon and fellow leader Omar Maute. Duterte highlighted the need to discuss terrorism as one of the regional and international concerns that ASEAN and other world leaders must jointly resolve. Meanwhile, Duterte said that he and other ASEAN leaders will be looking onto the progress of the regional bloc's community-building efforts. He also announced that ASEAN member states have come to an agreement on the ASEAN Consensus on the protection and promotion of rights of migrant workers. Other deliverables in the ASEAN Summit include those concerning health, women and the youth, trafficking, poverty alleviation, food security, coastal and marine environment, and the pursuit of innovation for economies. World leaders arrived at the Clark International Airport over the weekend to attend the 31st ASEAN Summit. Airport officials said the arrivals have been generally smooth. Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen and Myanmar State Councilor Aung San Suu Kyi arrived in Clark Airport on Saturday afternoon. Next were Lao Prime Minister Thongloun Sisoulith and Indonesian President Joko Widodo Sunday morning. Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak arrived at noon, followed by Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong minutes past 1 p.m. The Grey Royal New Zealand Air Force carrying New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern landed shortly, followed by the CC-150 Polaris carrying Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The support aircraft of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe landed afterwards. Abe arrived in the country via Ninoy Aquino International Airport at around 1:35 p.m. Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha arrived around 2 in the afternoon, followed by Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull and Vietnam Prime Minister Nguyen Xuyen Phuc. U.S. President Donald Trump arrived via Air Force One on Sunday night. Clark International Airport Corporation President and CEO Alexander Caguiran said the airport encountered no problems even as some aircrafts landed the tarmac only a few minutes apart. He added that commercial flights taking off and landing at Clark International Airport had normal operations. Caguiran said they are ready to accommodate leaders who want to fly back to their countries via Clark International Airport. U.S. President Donald Trump has offered to fill in a mediator role in the existing dispute between China and countries in the South China Sea. Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano thanked Trump for his offer. He described Trump as a good mediator and a master of the art of the deal. Cayetano, however, clarified that even before the Philippines could accept Trump's offer, other claimant countries in the contested waters must first give their take on the proposal. Cayetano noted that claimants are making progress on talks about preserving marine life, allowing fishermen to continue livelihood in the area, having less Navy and most Coast Guards, and more cooperation among others. Trump was quoted during his visit to Vietnam as offering to mediate or arbitrate in the row with China. The Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency clarified that the list of narco politicians released by the Department of the Interior and local government was gathered by an interagency intelligence task force. PDEA Director General Aaron Aquino said the Interagency Validation Task Force was created last January. The group consists of PDEA, Philippine National Police, Directorate for Intelligence, Intelligence Service of the Armed Forces, and National Intelligence Coordinating Agency. PDEA has been updating the list, which came from the Office of the President on a monthly basis. The DILG earlier announced that 25 local chief executives were stripped off their control over local police. The National Police Commission said among the basis for the withdrawal of police power is the report of PDEA on suspected narco politicians. Aquino, meanwhile, said that under his leadership in PDEA, a total of 10 elected officials were arrested due to involvement in illegal drug activities. The ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, or AICHR, is committed to actively implement the ASEAN Convention Against Trafficking in Persons, especially Women and Children, or ACTIP. ACTIP came into force on March 8 this year when the Philippines became the 6th ASEAN member state to ratify it. The Philippine government stressed the importance of regional cooperation to combat trafficking in persons. Last August, Indonesia organized a cross-sectoral consultation on human rights-based instruments related to the implementation of ACTIP. Philippine Representative and AICHR Chair Leo Herrera Lim, along with DFA ASEAN Executive Director Zaldi Patron, highlighted the need to educate people on how to look out for incidents of human trafficking. Meanwhile, AICHR Philippines in 2018 will partner with AICHR Singapore and Child Rights Coalition Asia in conducting a workshop to promote and protect the rights of children in ASEAN. The Department of Health placed all hospitals in the National Capital Region, Central Luzon, and Calabarzon on blue alert in line with the country's hosting of the 31st ASEAN Summit. Health Emergency Management Bureau coordinators are required to be physically present at the hospitals placed under the said alert. The code Blue Alert is usually raised during significant international events to ensure the readiness of the hospital to attend immediately and provide fast delivery of health services. Under Code Blue Alert, 50% of all hospital personnel shall report for duty in the facility to render medical and other services to possible casualties in an emergency situation. Authorities recommended to revoke the driver's license of actress and Binibining Pilipinas Universe 1982 Maria Isabel Lopez for using a lane exclusive for ASEAN delegates to escape traffic. In her Facebook account, Lopez bragged that she removed plastic barriers and entered the ASEAN lane on EDSA. She also proudly pretended to be a participant of the ASEAN Summit while driving with hazard lights on. National Capital Region Police Office Director Oscar Albayalde said Lopez acted contrary to her stature as an example of the Filipino community. The Metropolitan Manila Development Authority said Lopez's act was a serious breach of security. The Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board and the MMDA will recommend to the Land Transportation Office the suspension of the actress's driver's license. MMDA clarified that only emergency vehicles can use the ASEAN lane apart from the participants of the summit. The Armed Forces of the Philippines said a total of 521 rebels of the New People's Army have voluntarily surrendered to the government. The government terminated its peace negotiations with their leaders last February 4. Aside from the surrenderers, 121 rebels were killed in combat operations and 94 were apprehended. It also recovered over 500 high and low-powered firearms from the rebel group. AFP Public Affairs Office Chief Colonel Edgar Arevalo said the continuous surrender of NPA members indicates the group's dwindling strength and the success of the military's operations. AFP Chief of Staff General Ray Leonardo Guerrero meanwhile said surrenderers are welcome to return to the folds of the law. They will receive assistance in line with the government's reintegration efforts. Still to come, Philippine exports to ASEAN countries increased from January to September this year. The Department of Labor and Employment suspends issuance of employment certificates following reports of illegal recruitment activities. These and more when the PNA Newsroom continues.
The Association of Southeast Asian Nations is an organization of countries bonding together to promote peace, stability, and growth in the Asian region. ASEAN is guided by the principles of respect for independence, internal and external non-interference, peaceful settlement of differences, and cooperation. On August 8, 1967, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand signed the Bangkok Declaration as a display of solidarity against communist expansion and insurgency. Brunei Darussalam joined in 1984, Vietnam in 1995, Laos PDR and Myanmar in 1997, and Cambodia in 1999, making up what is today the 10 member states of ASEAN. In the 9th ASEAN Summit in 2003, plans came to establish an ASEAN community, a community of opportunities under the pillars of political security, economic, and socio-cultural community. In the 13th ASEAN Summit in November 2007, member nations adopted the ASEAN Charter. The Charter serves as a firm foundation in achieving the ASEAN community by providing legal status and institutional framework for ASEAN. It was enforced and launched in December 2008, turning ASEAN into a legal entity. It was a milestone for ASEAN as its members established themselves as a solid, evolving regional community.
The Philippines formally opened the 31st ASEAN Summit, coinciding with the 50th anniversary of the creation of ASEAN. President Rodrigo Duterte led the opening ceremony at the Cultural Center of the Philippines. He emphasized the need for world leaders to discuss matters of regional and international importance. He highlighted security concerns in the region such as terrorism, extremism, and illegal drugs as issues that are high in the Philippines' agenda. He also thanked other countries for supporting the military operations and rehabilitation of Marawi City. The world leaders convened afterwards for the ASEAN Summit plenary held at the PICC, followed by the ASEAN leaders' interface with the ASEAN Business Council. In the afternoon, ASEAN leaders held meetings with some of their dialogue partners, particularly the United States, China, and Korea. The summit also commemorated the 40th anniversary of ASEAN-US dialogue relations. The leaders of ASEAN +3, which includes China, Japan, and South Korea, later on met with the East Asia Business Council. Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam met for the 9th Mekong-Japan Summit. The summit ended its first day with a meeting with United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Close to 1,000 protesters violently stormed a police barricade along Padre Faura Street in Manila. Left-leaning organizations were protesting the presence of U.S. President Donald Trump in the 50th ASEAN celebration. The protesters were armed with sticks when they clashed with the anti-riot police. Authorities forced the protesters to retreat with water cannons. At least 6 policemen and 20 protesters were injured. The rallyist eventually settled down in front of the Supreme Court along Padre Faura. NCRPO Director Oscar Albayalde earlier vowed not to allow the protesters to come close to the venues of the 31st ASEAN Summit. He thanked the police for exercising maximum tolerance despite the behavior of the protesters. Philippine merchandise exports to ASEAN member states recovered after a drop in export revenues last year. Latest data from the Philippine Statistics Authority showed that the country's export to ASEAN increased in January to September 2017 to $7.16 billion from $6.41 billion last year. This was a turnaround from the negative exports growth of 4.8% last year compared to revenues in 2015. Meanwhile, Philippine imports from ASEAN countries went up in the first 8 months of 2017 by 8.9% year-to-date. Total trade of the Philippines to ASEAN rose 9.7% in the first 7 months compared to 2016. The Department of Labor and Employment ordered the suspension of the acceptance and processing of applications for overseas employment certificates for all overseas Filipino workers. The suspension order will be effective starting today, November 13, until December 1st. This is to give officials time to look into reports of illegal recruitment activities victimizing Filipino workers. Workers hired by international organizations, members of diplomatic corps, including members of royal families, and sea-based recruitment agencies are not covered by the suspension. This is the second time this year that DOLE suspended the processing and issuance of certificates due to reported anomalies involving some people at the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration. Operatives of the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency arrested 4 soldiers in a suspected gun-for-hire in Tagum City, Davao del Norte. The 4 were arrested in a buy-bust operation with PNA Task Force Davao, Task Force Tagum, Tagum City Police Station, and 46th Infantry Battalion in Barangay West, Magugpo. The suspects tried to resist arrest and engage operatives in a firefight. One of them was wounded. PDEA recovered 5 grams of suspected methamphetamine hydrochloride worth 75,000 pesos, 3 caliber .45 pistols, several ammunition, and motorcycles. Local officials and residents of Maguindanao and North Cotabato hailed the order of President Rodrigo Duterte to immediately dredge Mindanao's vast and heavily silted marshland. The 220,000-hectare Liguasan Marsh usually overflows and causes floods in low-lying communities near Maguindanao and North Cotabato. Rivers from South Cotabato, Sultan Kudarat, and Bukidnon flow toward the marshland before exiting to the Moro Gulf. Earlier, Agriculture Secretary Emmanuel Piñol said President Rodrigo Duterte had ordered the dredging of the Liguasan Marsh and the 3 major flood-spewing rivers of Agusan, Pampanga, and Cagayan provinces. Piñol said he recommended to President Duterte to start the dredging because frequent flooding in these areas affect and destroy crops every year. The Bureau of Customs at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport intercepted 7 packages containing wildlife. The packages shipped from Bulacan and bound for Taiwan were found to contain over 100 Chinese soft-shell turtles and live eels. The turtles that reportedly came from Pampanga have no permits from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, which is required before exportation. The DENR is still determining the market value of the turtles. Operatives from the BOC and DNR also intercepted a package bound for Sweden last October. The package was declared to contain sweet pastries but was found to contain 1 pit viper, 4 Philippine cobras, and 10 sailfin lizards. Another parcel containing 7 pit vipers bound for China was intercepted after X-ray examination. All wildlife specimens were turned over to the DENR. Up next, Congresswoman Gloria Arroyo hosts a dinner for the leaders of Cambodia and Myanmar. Filipino bowler Crizia Lynn Tabora wins in the 53rd Kibika AMF World Cup. These and more when the PNA Newsroom returns.
An ASEAN member state assuming the chairmanship shall chair the ASEAN Summit and related summits, the ASEAN Coordinating Council, the 3 ASEAN Community Councils, relevant ASEAN sectoral ministerial bodies and senior officials, and the Committee of Permanent Representatives. Indonesia first hosted the ASEAN Summit in 1976. Leaders signed a peace treaty called the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation. In 1977, under the chairmanship of Malaysia, Japan expressed its intention to promote cooperation with ASEAN. The Philippines hosted the summit for the first time in 1987. The Treaty of Amity and Cooperation was amended, accepting other countries outside Southeast Asia. In 1992, under Singapore's first chairmanship, leaders endorsed the creation of the ASEAN Free Trade Area. The summit chaired by Thailand in 1995 saw the signing of the Treaty on the Southeast Asia Nuclear Weapon-Free Zone and the ASEAN Framework Agreement on Intellectual Property Cooperation. Under Vietnam's first chairmanship in 1998, the leaders approved the Hanoi Declaration, enforcing bold measures to strengthen economic, political, and security cooperation. In 2001, under the chairmanship of Brunei, leaders adopted a declaration to counter terrorism and HIV/AIDS. The next year in Cambodia, leaders reached a consensus on issues of concern and also including terrorism. They also signed the ASEAN Tourism Agreement. Laos first hosted the ASEAN Summit in 2004. To improve regional integration, leaders adopted the Vientiane Action Program. Among its key points is the promotion of human rights. Myanmar, the latest member of ASEAN, chaired the organization in 2014. The summit focused on community building through the Naypyidaw Declaration.
President Rodrigo Duterte and his partner Hanilet Abansenya received world leaders for the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. U.S. President Donald Trump and other leaders arrived at the SMX Convention Center wearing Philippine costumes. President Duterte led the toast with the leaders. He said he expected productive and constructive discussions in the coming day. He also stressed that there should be cooperation and unity towards centrality and the continuous success of ASEAN. Filipino chef Jessie Sincioko prepared the menu consisting of ensaladang ubod at alokbati as appetizer, sinigang na maya-maya sa miso and bistek sushi as main course, and budin or Filipino caramel flan as dessert. Participants were also treated with a variety of performances such as folk dance, tap dance, ballet, and song numbers from local artists. Former President and now Pampanga Representative Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo hosted a dinner for the leaders of Cambodia and Myanmar in Clark, Pampanga. Arroyo, together with Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana, welcomed Myanmar State Councilor Aung San Suu Kyi and Cambodia's Prime Minister Hun Sen upon their arrival. The foreign leaders received arrival honors at Clark Airport. The dinner for the two heads of states and their delegations was held at Midori Hotel in Clark. Suu Kyi and Hun Sen were the first among the 20 foreign leaders to arrive at the Clark International Airport on Saturday afternoon. United States President Donald Trump praised the Philippines for its efforts to promote women empowerment and address gender inequality. The U.S. President lauded the Philippines' continued top ranking in the World Economic Forum in terms of addressing gender gaps. He said that generations have witnessed how Filipino women transform the country into a prosperous and resilient community. He added that the World Economic Forum ranked the Philippines first among Asian countries in closing the gender gap and embracing women leaders in business and in politics. The 2017 Global Gender Gap Index ranks 144 countries by analyzing women's participation rates and gaps between men and women in education, health, politics, and economy. The country continues to have the narrowest gender gap in Asia, earning a score of 0.790. Manila, however, dipped to 10th place from 7th place last year. Filipino bowler Crizia Lynn Tabora won in the women's finals of the 53rd Kibika AMF World Cup in Hermosillo, Mexico. Tabora scored 236 points against 191 by Malaysian City Safia Amira Abdul Rahman to claim the championship trophy after their title showdown at the Ball 300 lanes in Sonora, northwestern Mexico. Tabora has expressed her excitement for winning the World Cup. She was a member of the team that won the bronze in the SEA Games in 2015 in Singapore and 2017 in Malaysia. Pag-asa is monitoring a low-pressure area that has been spotted off Palawan. The low-pressure area will bring light to moderate rains over Palawan and in central Visayas and Zamboanga Peninsula. Meanwhile, a low-pressure area earlier spotted off General Santos City has dissipated. Delegates and other participants of the ASEAN Summit in Metro Manila may expect partly cloudy to cloudy skies with isolated rain showers or thunderstorms. Here is the weather outlook for the rest of the country. Let's take another look at today's headlines. Clark International Airport reports a smooth arrival of world leaders attending the 31st ASEAN Summit. U.S. President Donald Trump offers to act as mediator between China and other countries claiming territories in the West Philippine Sea. Philippine exports to ASEAN countries increased from January to September this year. And the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency arrests 4 soldiers and a gun for hire involved in illegal drugs. The holidays are coming soon. It's 42 days before Christmas. For more stories, please log on to www.pna.gov.ph or visit the PNA page on Facebook and Twitter. And that's your daily dose of the hottest news and the latest information that you need to know from the PNA Newsroom. I'm William Theo. Good day.